Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We're spending the hour talking about a new film, given the significance of the issue of immigration in this country today. The film is called Harvest of Empire. It is opening at the Laemmle Theater in Pasadena in California and at the Quad Theater here in New York on 13th Street on Friday through October 4th. Eduardo López is with us. He is co-director and producer, along with Wendy Thompson-Marquez, of this remarkable film that's based on co-host Juan Gonzalez's book, Harvest of Empire, A History of Latinos in America. Eduardo, the last clip we played was of Archbishop Romero, March 24th, 1980. He is assassinated in El Salvador by a U.S.-backed death squad. You yourself are from El Salvador, an immigrant here in the United States.
This is, again, one of the reasons why we produced this film and why we feel so strongly about it, because as Juan points out in his book and in the film, El Salvador is really maybe the latest and one of the clearest examples of this direct connection between our foreign policy and immigration. In the census of 1980, there were less than 100,000 Salvadorans listed, and just 32 years later, we are poised to become the third largest Latino population in the United States. You have to remember, El Salvador is the smallest country in all of the Americas. And yet, how is it that in only 32 years, we are about to become the third largest Latino population in the United States? If all of the rhetoric about immigration was true, and it's poverty or our dysfunctional governments, if that were really the cause of immigration, you would have had people coming from El Salvador forever. But that's not the case. People started coming in 1980 because of the war, and specifically because of our own country's actions in the war. In the film, we talk about the School of the Americas and how most of the human rights abuses and the massacres, including the killing of the nuns and the murder of Archbishop Romero, was really done by people trained at the School of the Americas by our own country. And so this is a clear example of how this connection continues to exist. It's not something that just happened 150 years ago. It continues to happen.
And, of course, you have the latest presidential link, this remarkable story surrounding Bain, how Mitt Romney helped found Bain Capital with investments from Central American Central American elites linked to the death squads in El Salvador. Now, this is something we reported on and discussed on Democracy Now! After initially struggling to find investors, Romney traveled to Miami in 1983 to win pledges of $9 million, 40% of Bain's startup money. Some investors had extensive ties to death squads responsible for a vast majority of the deaths in Salvador in the 1980s. The investors include the Salaverria family, whom the former U.S. ambassador to El Salvador, Robert White, previously accused of directly funding the Salvadoran paramilitaries. In his memoir, former Bain executive Harry Strawn writes, Romney pushed aside his own misgivings about the investors to accept their backing. He writes, these Latin American friends have loyally rolled over investments in succeeding funds, actively participated in Bain Capital's May investor meetings, and are still today one of the largest investor groups in Bain Capital. I want to get your comment then, Juan's.
I think that if Governor Romney had ever bothered to meet one of the torture victims of the death squads, or one of the family members of the people who were brutally killed during that time, maybe he would have thought twice about accepting that blood money. To me, it's really unacceptable. When you look at the, I believe it was around $9 million that he accepted as the investment money. But where this money came from and the people who gave it to him is something that he really should have looked at much more closely, because it is related to the most terrible atrocities. As Ambassador Robert White says in our film, when you arm a group of uniformed butchers, the people don't emigrate, they flee. And to me, it's unbelievable that now Governor Romney talks about immigrants with derogatory terms like illegals, and yet he profited from the funding that actually caused so much of the immigration to the United States from El Salvador.
In fact, Mitt Romney talks about people should self-deport. Juan Gonzalez.
Yeah. Well, I think that throughout Central America, in Salvador, in Nicaragua, in Honduras, there's always been a very small elite that has benefited from being a comprador group, basically facilitating the exploitation of their own countries by American businesses largely. And I think that that Romney was so closely tied to some of the Salvadoran compradors is really astounding in terms of, as Eduardo says, his stance on immigration. And in the film, they actually have an incredible, one of the most powerful portions of the film is the testimony of one of the Salvadoran torture victims who became an immigrant or a refugee here in the United States. And she talks in vivid terms about the kinds of tortures that she went through and how somehow managed to survive. And I think that it's that Romney got his start in Bain through this investment by some of these Salvadoran elites is really